Mind telling me whose car this is?
It's the owner's. I'm test driving it for Noble Auto. Just fix the transmission.
Funny, because guys in coveralls don't usually sit behind the wheel of a 90 grand Benz unless they stole it.
I'm telling you the truth. Paperwork's right there on the seat.
Yeah, sure. Where'd you really get it?
Shop dropped it off this morning. I'm just making sure shit's clean.
For a skilled mechanic, taking a car for a spin is the last step in a job done right. But for Officer Grant Keebler, spotting a black man in blue overalls behind the wheel of a $90,000 Mercedes-Benz didn't look like work. It looked like a crime. He pulled the vehicle over, ignored the paperwork sitting on the seat, and handcuffed a man just for doing his job. He believed he had caught a thief. Little did he know, he was about to make a call that would destroy his career. What you just witnessed was a classic case of profiling, an officer unable to match the driver's look with the car's worth. You saw the confrontation. Now we'll share the full story and show the moment the officer tried to play hero by calling the owner, only to realize he was the villain. If you think judging someone by their appearance is reckless police work, hit that subscribe button. Let's go back to earlier that afternoon at Noble Auto, a high-end European car shop tucked into an industrial corner of suburban Plena. Detroit. In Bay 3, under fluorescent lights that buzzed softly against the gray Michigan sky visible through the garage doors, Jhon Jacobe was putting the finishing touches on one of the most demanding tasks a mechanic can tackle, a full transmission rebuild on a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. The kind of job most shops wouldn't even attempt. The kind of work that separates capable mechanics from true artisans. Jhon was 34 and had earned every certification the automotive industry offered. Master Certified ASC Advanced Level Specialist, Mercedes-Benz Factory Trained. His blue work jumpsuit, worn and stained from a decade of dedicated labor, had his name stitched in white thread across the left chest, J. Jacobe. In the industry, those credentials carried weight. To Jay, they meant everything. He hadn't wandered into this career. He had built it step by step, late night after late night, studying technical manuals while others watched TV, solving problems other mechanics had given up on. He was the one shops called when they were stuck, the transmission whisperer, the name customers requested specifically. The S-Class had arrived 3 days earlier with an issue that had baffled 2 other shops. The transmission slipped between 3rd and 4th gear, throwing sporadic codes that didn't match any usual diagnostic pattern. Its owner, a successful business executive who'd had the car since new, had been told by a dealership it needed a full replacement, $15,000. Jhon had spent the afternoon simply listening to the car, feeling each shift, reading the data stream like a language only he understood. He had pinpointed a valve body problem complicated by a software calibration issue. Not a replacement, just a repair. He had disassembled the transmission to its core parts, swapped the worn valve body, added fresh fluid and filters, and then spent hours recalibrating the adaptive learning system. But here's what most people don't realize about modern luxury cars. Fixing them is only half the battle. These vehicles have computers that learn driving habits, adapt to conditions, and must be reset and retrained after major repairs. You can't just button it up and hand over the keys. You have to perform what's called a drive cycle, a specific set of driving actions in a precise order. Cold start, idle, gradual acceleration, highway speed, deceleration, stop-and-go simulation. The car's computer uses this data to relearn shift points, adjust fuel trim, and make sure everything works in sync. Without this, the repair isn't truly done. The customer would get the car back, and in a day or two, the same issues would return. For a mechanic of Jhon's skill, that was unacceptable. So that afternoon, after tightening the last bolt and running the car through stationary diagnostics, Jhon grabbed the work order from the metal clipboard hanging on the shop wall. The document clearly listed the customer's name, contact details, vehicle identification number, and a full description of the repair. Noble Auto's logo was printed at the top. Jhon's name filled in the technician section. He set the clipboard on the passenger seat of the Mercedes-Benz, right on the tan leather, exactly where it belonged. He adjusted the driver's seat to fit his 6-foot frame, checked his mirrors, and pulled out of the bay into the gray Detroit afternoon. The drive cycle required specific conditions: light traffic, a mix of city streets and highway, room to accelerate smoothly without abrupt stops. Jhon knew the perfect route, a loop taking about 20 minutes that hit all the needed points. He guided the Mercedes-Benz through the first stage, feeling the transmission shift exactly as it should. The changes were crisp, smooth, flawless. He let himself a brief moment of pride. This was why he did this work. Not for the paycheck, though he made a comfortable living. It was for this feeling, the satisfaction of taking something broken and restoring it to perfection. He was 12 minutes into the drive cycle, cruising down a tree-lined suburban street with modest homes and sedans in driveways, when he saw the sudden flash of lights in his rearview mirror, red and blue, stark against the gray sky. His first reaction wasn't fear, it was confusion. He checked his speed, 32 in a 35 zone. The registration was up to date. The car wasn't his, but he had every legal right to drive it. He had the paperwork to prove it. He hadn't done anything wrong. Still, his chest tightened as he signaled and eased to the curb, because Jhon Jacobe was a black man in America, and he knew that sometimes following the law didn't matter. He put the Mercedes-Benz in park, switched off the engine, and rested both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, visible and non-threatening. Through his side mirror, he watched two officers step out of the patrol car. One moved to the driver's side, standing silently, rigid and imposing, like a statue meant to intimidate. The other officer, Grant Keebler, came around the passenger side, his body camera rolling, capturing every second from his point of view as he leaned to peer through the window. Through the glass, Keebler saw exactly what he expected based on a split-second assumption. He had built the scenario in his head the moment he spotted the car 3 blocks earlier. A black man in a blue work jumpsuit behind the wheel of a car worth more than most people make in 2 years. The clash didn't compute. In Keebler's mind, shaped by unchecked biases and unexamined assumptions, the numbers didn't add up. Mechanics don't drive cars like this. They stand beside them with rags and diagnostic tools. They don't sit in them wearing work boots and coveralls, grease under their fingernails. Keebler saw what he wanted to see, what reinforced his worldview, what promised an arrest that would look impressive on paper and earn praise from his bosses. He saw a crime unfolding. Jhon rolled down the passenger side window and waited, hands still on the wheel, his Officer Keebler leaned in slightly, eyes sweeping over the pristine interior, the tan leather, polished wood trim, and luxury finishes that seemed at odds with the blue-collar look of the driver. "Mind telling me whose car this is?" Keebler asked, his tone already thick with suspicion. The question wasn't genuine. It was the opening line in an interrogation he had already written in his mind. "It's the owner's. I'm test driving it for Noble Auto. Just finished the transmission," Jhon replied, his voice steady, stating a simple fact. "Aha," Keebler said, the single word dripping with disbelief, a verbal eye roll dismissing Jhon's explanation before it even landed. He straightened, glanced at the car, then back at Jhon, and delivered a line that would later appear in legal briefs and civil rights complaints. Funny, because guys in coveralls don't usually sit behind the wheel of a 90-grand Benz unless they stole it. The words hung between them, harsh, presumptive. Not a question, but an accusation disguised as casual observation, a judgment based entirely on appearance. Jhon felt the familiar flood of emotions he had faced too many times before. Anger at the unfairness, frustration at having to prove his innocence just for existing, fear of where this could go. But he kept his voice steady, maintained his professionalism, knowing that any sign of emotion could be twisted against him. "I'm telling you the truth. Paperwork's right there on the seat," Jhon said, nodding toward the passenger seat, where the metal clipboard lay in plain view, just inches from Officer Keebler's line of sight. The work order, complete with official documentation, waiting to be reviewed. Keebler's eyes flicked to the clipboard. He saw it. His chest camera captured him looking directly at it. The work order, Noble Auto's letterhead, the vehicle details, the repair notes, all right there, needing only a simple glance to verify Jhon's story and end the crisis. Encounter in seconds. But Keebler didn't reach for it, didn't ask to see it, didn't check the proof that would have instantly confirmed the truth. Because he had already decided what the truth was, and anything that contradicted it was just background noise to ignore. "Yeah, sure. Where do you really get it?" he asked, his voice hardening, shifting from doubt to outright hostility. Jhon took a slow breath, forcing down the anger, keeping the calm that years of navigating a world that constantly questioned his right to exist in certain spaces had taught him, not the police academy. "Shop dropped it off this morning. I'm just making sure it shifts clean," he said. But Keebler wasn't listening anymore. In his mind, he had caught someone in the act. The story was too convenient. The paperwork must be fake. This was a car thief who had gotten clever, creating fake work orders to explain why he was behind the wheel of a stolen Mercedes. This was going to be a headline arrest. It would look great in his report. It would be the kind of story mentioned at roll call. "Step out of the vehicle," Keebler ordered, hand moving to his belt, his stance aggressive, ready for what he saw as a confrontation with a criminal rather than a professional at work. Jhon complied. He always complied. Compliance was survival. He opened the door slowly, hands visible, moving deliberately to avoid any motion that could be misread. He stepped onto the pavement, work boots scraping the asphalt, his blue jumpsuit with Jhon Jacobe stitched across the chest now fully visible, a uniform that should have told the whole story, but told Keebler nothing. "Turn around, hands behind your back," Keebler commanded, already pulling the handcuffs from his belt, the metal glinting in the dim afternoon light. "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a mechanic. This is my job. The paperwork is right there. You can call the shop. You can call the owner," Jhon said, keeping calm even as his heart pounded, the absurdity and injustice threatening to break his composure. But Keebler was already snapping the cuffs around Jhn's wrists, ratcheting them tight, reciting the words that would later serve as proof of gross misconduct. "You're under arrest for suspicion of grand theft. Otto, you have the right to remain silent." Jhon stood there, handcuffed behind his back, his career and reputation hanging by a thread, arrested for doing his job while black. The second officer, silent and watching, did nothing, complicit in his inaction. And then Officer Keebler had what he thought was a brilliant idea, a way to confirm the theft, a chance to be the hero who not only recovered a stolen vehicle, but delivered the good news personally to the victim. He pulled out his phone, accessed the vehicle registration database, found the owner's contact info, and dialed the number, putting it on speaker so his partner could hear and the body camera could capture his moment of triumph. The phone rang twice, before a professional male voice answered. "Hello." Officer Keebler smiled, that self-satisfied look of someone convinced they were about to deliver good news. "Hello, sir. This is Officer Keebler with the police department. I'm calling because we've recovered your stolen Mercedes-Benz." There was a pause, a confused pause, not the relieved gratitude Keebler expected. "Stolen? What are you talking about? My car isn't stolen. It's at the shop." Keebler's smile wavered. "Sir, I have your Mercedes-Benz S-Class right here. We've just arrested the man who was driving it." "What?" The owner's voice shifted from confused to alarmed. "Is Jhon driving it?" The name hit Keebler like a splash of cold water. Yes, a male named Jhon is who we've detained." And then the owner's voice erupted over the speaker, loud enough for Jhon to hear from where he stood handcuffed beside the patrol car, loud enough that the body camera captured every word clearly. "That's my mechanic. Jhon Jacobe is my mechanic. He's the only person I trust with that car. They're test driving it after a transmission repair." "Why the hell are you harassing him? Take those handcuffs off him right now." The color drained from Officer Keebler's face. His partner shifted uneasily. The body camera captured the instant of realization, the split second when Keebler understood he had made a catastrophic mistake. But this was where the encounter went from bad to career-ending. This was the moment Officer Keebler made the choice that would cost him everything. Faced with undeniable proof that he had arrested an innocent man based solely on bias and assumptions, Keebler had two options: admit the error, apologize, and release Jhon immediately, or double down and try to find anything to justify the arrest and save face. He chose the latter. "Sir, I understand what you're saying, but I still need to verify your identity and investigate further," Keebler said, his voice taking on a bureaucratic tone, searching for procedural cover where none existed. The owner was stunned. "Verify my identity? I'm telling you right now, that's my mechanic doing his job. You're looking at the paperwork, aren't you? The work order is in the car." "Sir, I need to follow proper procedure," Keebler insisted. Then he ended the call. What came next was where Keebler crossed the line from mistake to misconduct, from error to violation. He kept Jhon handcuffed and placed him in the back of the patrol car, the afternoon sun baking the interior as temperatures climbed into the 80s, the air stagnant and suffocating. He told Jhon he would be released once the investigation was complete. Then he spent the next hour rifling through the Mercedes-Benz, front to back, under seats, in every compartment, the trunk, desperately hunting for something, anything to justify the arrest. Drugs, weapons, stolen goods, anything that would let him write a report that didn't end with the truth, arrested an innocent mechanic based on racial profiling. He found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. Jhon Jacobe was exactly who he claimed to be, a master mechanic doing his job. And the only evidence in the car proved it. The work order, diagnostic printouts, shop paperwork, all sitting on the passenger seat exactly where it had been from the start. 63 minutes after the traffic stop began, Officer Keebler finally opened the back door of the patrol car and removed the handcuffs from Jhon's wrists. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just a curt, "You're free to go," and a warning to drive carefully. Jhon stood there for a moment, wrists red from the cuffs, his jumpsuit soaked with sweat, dignity battered, his day destroyed. He got back into the Mercedes-Benz, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, and drove back to Noble Auto. The drive cycle ruined, the repair unfinished. Everything he had worked for that day reduced to ashes by an officer who couldn't look past his own bias. But the story didn't end there. Because while Officer Keebler thought he could move on, thought he could write the stop off as a routine suspicious vehicle investigation with no arrest on record, thought he could hide his mistake in paperwork and procedure, he had made one critical error. He had humiliated the wrong person's mechanic. The owner of that Mercedes-Benz wasn't just any customer. He was a successful attorney who specialized in civil rights cases. When Jhon called him that evening to explain what had happened, to apologize for not finishing the drive cycle, or to ask if he wanted to take his car elsewhere, the owner's response was immediate and firm. "Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong, and we're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Within 48 hours, a formal complaint had been filed with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. Within a week, Jhon had retained an experienced civil rights attorney, someone who had built a career on holding police accountable. The body camera footage was subpoenaed, and what it showed was damning. An officer who had been presented with clear exculpatory evidence, who had seen the work order, who had spoken directly to the vehicle's owner, and who then unlawfully extended a traffic stop for over an hour, conducting a pointless search while keeping an innocent man detained in inhumane conditions. The legal term for what Officer Keebler had done was false arrest. The constitutional violation was clear, an unreasonable seizure under the Fourth Amendment. The racial element turned it into a civil rights case under Section 1983. The lawsuit named Officer Keebler personally and the police department as defendants. It detailed every moment of the encounter, every procedural failure, every piece of ignored evidence. It described the psychological trauma, the humiliation, and the assault on Jhon's dignity. It emphasized that the entire incident could have been avoided if the officer had simply looked at the paperwork in plain view or released Jhon immediately after speaking with the owner instead of doubling down on his mistake. The city's legal team reviewed the body camera footage and the case file. They weighed the cost of going to trial versus settling, considered the optics of defending an officer who arrested a mechanic for driving a customer's car, and looked at recent jury verdicts in similar cases. The city settled for $450,000. No admission of wrongdoing, as settlements usually stipulate, but the amount spoke volumes. That kind of money isn't paid out for a minor misunderstanding. It's paid when the alternative, going to trial and losing even more, is worse. Officer Grant Keebler was fired 3 weeks after the settlement was announced. The official reason cited was conduct unbecoming an officer and creating significant liability for the department. The real reason was that he let his bias override his training, judgment, and basic human decency. He saw a black man in work pants, a polo shirt, and a briefcase, and had clothes, driving an expensive car, and his mind simply refused to consider the most obvious explanation: the man was working. He'd been given multiple chances to fix his mistake and had instead chosen to escalate, dig in, and put his ego above justice, and it had cost him everything. Jhon Jacobe went back to work. He finished the transmission repair on the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, completed the drive cycle without issue, and returned the keys to the owner with his usual care and professional pride. The settlement money helped. It paid off his mortgage, funded his daughter's college account, and gave him a financial cushion he had never had before. But no amount of money could erase the memory of standing on the side of the road in handcuffs, arrested for the crime of doing his job well. No settlement could restore the hour he spent in the back of that patrol car, wondering if this was the day his life would be changed forever for reasons he had nothing to do with. He still works at Noble Auto. He's still the best transmission specialist in the county. Customers still request him by name. But now, when he takes a car out for a test drive, there's a moment of hesitation before he turns the key, a flutter of anxiety when he sees a patrol car in the rearview mirror, a reminder that, in some people's eyes, he'll never fully fit behind the wheel of certain cars, no matter how many certifications he earns, no matter how skilled he becomes, no matter how perfectly his name is stitched across his chest. Because Officer Keebler's mistake wasn't just about bad policing, it was about something deeper, something more subtle. It was about the stories we tell ourselves when we encounter people who don't fit our expectations, the assumptions we make based on clothing, skin color, or the gap between someone's appearance and their circumstances. Keebler saw coveralls, dark skin, and a luxury car, and his mind built a story of theft because it was easier than imagining competence. He saw what he expected rather than what was real. In doing so, he exposed a truth that stretches far beyond one traffic stop on a gray afternoon in suburban Detroit. Bias doesn't always announce itself with slurs or threats. It whispers in the pause before checking the evidence. It speaks in the choice to ignore paperwork that contradicts preconceptions. It shows up in the decision to double down rather than admit a mistake. Jhon Jacobe's story reminds us that professionalism isn't always enough, that doing everything right doesn't guarantee fair treatment. Sometimes the real crime isn't the one being investigated, it's the investigation itself. And the cost of judging a book by its cover isn't just measured in settlements or lost jobs. It's in the trust that's shattered, the dignity that's denied, and the constant burden on people who must prove again and again that they have every right to be exactly where they are.